Once again, I see my boat, but I'm here in Chicago. So up here, I have GPS mode and manual mode. So I'm going to go ahead and click on manual mode, and it brings me to my shorelines. Okay. So remember, we looked at these shorelines on the website. And so, the pink and blue marks are, they're just alternating so we can see the 1,000-foot sections clearly. But now you can see that there's some other colors here, and these other colors are shorelines that have already been scored. So we have, green is our optimal shorelines. So that's kudos to, people that are, leaving their shorelines more natural. The more human impact we have on our shorelines, the worse we're going to score. Okay. Red is critical. Those are shorelines that, we want to, encourage folks to address, sooner rather than later. And then, our yellow is kind of mid-range. Okay. So that's what these color codes are giving us. So now remember, I had signed up for, this section of shoreline, and I've already gotten a few of them done. I want to go ahead and click on section 8 now, and that is going to populate the latitude, longitude, the lake, whatnot. Once again, I'm just going to go ahead and choose my um, monitors. This time, Fred and Greg are out there. Greg came from Marble, and he's working Coldwater now. The next thing we have to do is choose our lake level. Okay, so we'll say this time of year it's average. Hopefully, we don't have the same drought that we had last year. And then you're going to pass this shoreline, and when you do the training, you'll see how this works. But you're going to pass this 1,000-foot shoreline 3 times. The first time, the first pass, all you're doing is counting the number of homes, the number of buildings. Okay, so if there's, businesses on the shoreline, if there's big, pole barns on the shoreline, if there's houses, you want to count those. Okay, so let's say, I counted 5 houses in this 1,000-foot section, and there was docks, and docks will be a dock, a boat lift, things like that. And once again, the training will go through, what you're looking for. Okay. Then you're going to do a second pass, and this is the first pass is from 100 yards out. Then you're going to get a little bit closer if you can. You want to be about 20 to 30 yards out. Okay. And now this is asking you for your vegetation. So this is your weeds, your seaweed. It's not really seaweed. It's aquatic plants. But you're going to tell it how much emerging seaweed you see. So this is seaweed, or these are weeds that are growing out of the water or floating on top of the water. So I can say, oh, there was less than 10% there. And then submerged vegetation. I want to look in the water and see if there's any weeds in the water that I can visualize. And I'm going to say, yeah, there was about 10 to 25% there along the shoreline. Okay. Now remember, weeds are not bad. Okay. Invasive weeds are bad, but you'll see these scores. Number 2 is 10 to 20%. If I had 75% weeds along this 1,000-foot, that gives me a higher score. Okay, so weeds aren't these plants, I should say, are not bad. Okay, um, you don't want to get rid of all of your weeds. Obviously, you're going to clear them out to get your boat in and out, or have a swimming area. But we do want to leave some of our native plants in the water. Okay. Um, and so then it asks, is aquatic plant management evident? So in other words, are people, clearing out their beaches, clearing out their docks, things like that? That would be minor. If they've cleared out the entire, well, obviously it's going to be multiple, people probably on this 1,000-foot. But if, everybody's cleared out all of it, that's kind of major intervention. So you would select major. But I'll say, yeah, there's some swimming areas that obviously they're, pulling out their weeds and or, doing some kind of weed management there. Amount of downed trees is another thing. We probably won't see this in our, in front of our own homes, but we might see it, in on some of the lakes where the shoreline is still natural. So you would just tell it how many weeds. Now I'm monitoring cold or how many downed trees. I don't think we have any downed trees along here, so I'm going to say none. And then, do you see any erosion on the shoreline already? And you would say none observed, minor, moderate, or severe. And once again, the monitoring will give you a good idea. And I'll say, yeah, I see some minor erosion there. Okay. And then once again, this gives me now the littoral zone score. Each pass that you do, it's going to give you a score. Okay. So oh, so I'm sorry, it's not each pass, it's each zone. Okay, so that's the littoral zone. Now I'm going to do a pass 3, and this is the uh, um, um, riparian zone. And what I'm looking at is about 30 to 40 feet beyond the shoreline into the yards of the shores of the homeowners. And I want to say how much lawn is maintained in this 30 to 40-foot section. So, along this 1,000-foot section, yeah, about 10 to 25% of the people had manicured lawns. Okay. How much of that is unmowed vegetation belt? So, do we have gardens along there? Do we have natural plants growing along the shoreline? And I'll say, yeah, 25% of that shoreline has some natural plants growing there or some, high grasses. And high grasses are good because that, once again, that's what filters out the sediments that are coming into the water. So you're going to get a higher score the more um, vegetation you have in that belt. Okay. And then we want to know the depth of that vegetation. So does it go back less than 10 feet, 10 to 40 feet or over 40 feet? So I'll say, yeah, everybody, has about a 10-foot, buffer strip with some vegetation, on at least 25% of the shoreline there. Okay. And then that gives me my riparian zone score. And now it wants to know, once again, this goes back to erosion. So, is there any erosion control in place? So in other words, do people have seawalls here? And I'll say, yeah, there was some seawalls, but it was less than 10%. And yeah, it was a vertical seawall. And then some people along that section had some riprap. So I'll say there was about 10 to 25% of the shore that has some rip, riprap. Okay. And then bioengineering. Bioengineering is where they come in with kind of burlap logs and create it's it's more of a natural way to prevent erosion. They put plants within this burlap log and it creates more of a natural shoreline. So if anybody has done any bioengineering, we can say, what percentage of that shoreline is bioengineered. Okay. And I haven't noticed anything here. And now it's asking me, did the lake level impact the survey at all? So, was I not able to get close to shore because the lake level was so low, things, the normal shoreline, things like that. So you could say yes or no. If I say yes, it's going to ask me how it impacts. I'm just going to say no here. Okay. Once again, it's asking for at least one photo up to 3. Now, if you noticed in the other app, the photo button was down at the bottom, but here the photo button is up here alongside the map. And the reason being is, remember, you're making 3 passes here. You can take a photo at any time. Works the same way. I click on the photo. If you're clicking on the photo, it's going to ask you to take a photo. It's asking me to upload a photo, and I need to upload at least one photo. So I'll just select one photo here and choose accept. Okay, once I have all of that in place, it's telling me what the scores are. Okay, and 53 is the overall score. That puts me in the yellow zone, which is moderate. Okay, and then I just click submit survey. Once again, I'm hearing back from Jack that this is taking a long time, possibly even timing out. He had to, try to submit a couple times. So just be aware of that. I'm going to try to make improvements on this, but keep me informed on how this is going. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and just click OK there. And it brings me back to where I need to select another shoreline segment to go ahead and do another record. And then that, in a nutshell, is the shoreline app.